we have any others? I'd like to call this meeting of the village board to order. It is 7:52. Has this meeting been properly noticed?
The meeting has been posted and noticed according to law.
It appears that all trustees are present. So we will move into our first order of business, which is a special order of business to receive the final report of Phase 2 police building renovation and discussion on future building fees by Riley Construction.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you all again. Here to give a quick summary, and proud to be here to wrap up the final construction on Phase 2A of the Shorewood Police Department. We are complete. Occupancy has been received from the local building inspector, and the chief is moving in. So I'm going to give you a final update on the budget. And good news, everything's come in pretty much right on budget. We were able to get the entire project as designed originally, done for the dollars that were allocated. Really no major surprises. We were able to get the new roof on that building, which I think we all knew was badly needed, and also replaced all of the rooftop units that heat and cool the building. So no major issues on the budget as far as I'm concerned. I'm very happy to report everything went well. Any questions on the budget?
Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question on the very colorful map of the project that was at the end of your packet.
For the system?
Yes. So the green area, the community space, there's kind of this little like jog at the top of it. What happened there?
That is the existing, existing electrical room area. There's like a closet, and that's where all of the electrical services come into the building. There's a water service, I believe, in that
Okay, so
closet.
it's not really like open area that could be utilized.
Not the closet space that's kind of shown there, no.
Okay.
Anybody else have a question? I just have one. As I'm learning more about building, construction, and budgeting, the original budget and the final costs are exactly the same, and I see that there's certain line items that were more expensive. How does it end up? How does it end up exactly the same? Do you just
Sure.
take that contingency and, use it somewhere else, or, how did it turn out to be exactly the same?
Sure, absolutely. So if you remember from the original budget, we had some allowances and some contingencies that we had set aside for some anticipated, unforeseen conditions on the project, primarily with the roof, some of the demolition processes,
Is that
temporary.
53,000?
Correct, that is
Okay.
correct. That's the original allowance that we had pulled out of the bids, and yes, we did then turn around and spend that on the things that we kind of anticipated would be unforeseen. A lot of that went towards the roof. There were some unforeseen repairs with the roof that had to be addressed along the way, temporary barriers, there were some additional dumpster costs, things of that nature. That's used up that money.
So was this a not to exceed? Was there more costs?
It was a not to exceed number, so basically we used all of the contingency and then we managed it down to that, pretty much to that last
To
dollar,
the cent?
pretty much.
So usually with project costs, if it's not to exceed, you list the actual costs and then, it would show that there was an overage. I'm just wondering, it just seems odd.
Sure. I probably could have shown it that way. If I was being honest, the dollars were very tight and we probably ran over by a few $100s, but we just called it even on my end. So I chose not to show that here. I could have. Does that make sense?
So maybe in the future, just whatever the project costs are, I'd like to know what it ended up costing, and then, our bill, which would be not to exceed whatever.
Sure. This was a not to exceed number, so I understand what you're saying. I just chose not to show the overage.
Thank you. Trustee Menta?
I know it's not on the agenda, but I thought when we talked about budget, we talked about whether when we were here, we could talk about the next phase. What is it, phase 2B? Are we able to ask some questions about that, or no?
Yeah, we're going to get to that next, right?
And isn't Sigma is about alleys, but the next item is about alleys.
That's in the same line item.
Oh, yeah, future building design,
Future
fees
building
today.
design. Oh, okay, so we can't talk about that, okay. So we had a budget request for 65,000 for scoping, basically, for the parking garage.
The 65,000 were the anticipated design fees to complete the architectural, civil, mechanical designs to give us some better pricing documents to give a more accurate budget.
Is that just for the garage or for both the garage and community garage?
That is just for the garage.
And what's a normal,
Percent.
what's a normal percent for design services? So that's 30, like here it's 30,000 out of the 825. I mean, what would be the comparable? It just seemed like 65,000 seemed like,
Well, it depends on what they're, yeah, 60, is it a percent of the total construction budget?
It is not. This was me going to the design professionals and asking for their proposals to design that phase of the project.
so they want 60, I mean, a garage, they need $65,000 just to design a garage.
That would be the full engineered drawings and bidding documents, which would allow us then to turn around and completely bid this project out publicly as well. So fully
Well, can you
engineered
talk
drawings.
about what the components are as there, I know there's, just as been discussed before, is drainage and, was that in the packet?
No, that's from last year. There's HVAC and stuff. That sounds like there's carpeting, is there rooms in this thing?
Carpeting.
Yeah, it says phase 2 garage floor to remove.
That's for the garage floor. I think we were looking at the options of whether or not we'd have to re-pour the garage floor so that to allow for drainage. So that 65,000 includes several different consultants. So we do have the architectural component, the civil component, mechanical, electrical, and plumbing components. Those are all, so that's 5 consultants right there that all tie into this next phase. Because it is a garage, it is a little more unique. There's exhaust requirements because you're parking vehicles within the building. There's fire protection requirements. That space, that garage will actually become a different occupancy type within the building. So there is a little bit more engineering and design that has to go into this next phase.
What difference in occupancy that you're saying? Because we're doing that with the firehouse, and it seems like if you do a garage, it's less.
I do not know off the top of my head what type of occupancy classification, but I just know that it is different from office occupancy.
Could we find that out, just because just so we can, yes, we could.
I think my guess would be, and I'm not, well, I would just say offhand that it's probably, the standards for that garage would be a little different than the garage today. However, you should still resolve that issue. I guess I'm responding to, the board had a lot of concerns about spending $1 million for a garage, but it sounds like your description is indicating why a garage of this nature would rise to that level of funding pretty quickly.
There's a lot of different components that go into it. Now, remember that is just a budget, and that's kind of the target. My goal behind releasing these funds for full design is that it allows us to gather all that information, get it on paper, and we can then more accurately price it.
And then is there the potential for value engineering at that point, or?
There's always a chance for value engineering.
I mean, I just,
Trustee Mentor?
I don't think there's, and I'll just speak for myself, there's not an appetite for $1 million garage at that site. There just isn't. So my question to you and to whoever else is developing costs is, is there a garage we can build that meets code for $500,000, $400,000, something less? I think that's more the question rather than spend a lot of money to tell us that we need an expensive garage, because that's not going to get us to a place where we can move forward with this, from my perspective, and I'm just looking for myself.
Sure. Well, I think that's what the design process will allow us to do, is also look at the different options. It's hard to sit here right now and tell you that that garage can only be one thing and it has to be $1 million. I think there's a lot of variables that go into that throughout the design process. And one of those is we can look at how to scale it back and what that looks like and how feasible it might be. I mean, we are at limited space in this building, so you look at scaling back some of the parking and the amount of vehicles that can fit in there. Certainly that will save dollars, but then it limits operations. So it's, you start to look at the trade-offs for how much you have to spend, which is what we can do.
Are we looking at it being like a secure, I can't think of the police term, but where you would drive a vehicle in if you had a suspect or someone apprehended in the back, and that it's in a secure area before the person gets out? So are we looking at security aspects, or are we looking at basically just a place to garage the vehicles overnight?
So it would not be with Sally Port. We have the Sally Port. Yeah, we have the Sally Port, 2 overhead garage doors in the front is our current Sally Port, and this would be the garage space. So one of the things I think is important to point out is that this was full engineered design that we're talking about. I mean, we have talked, there are other options, but I think one of the problems with that is if you want harder numbers on like what this is going to cost, then I think that, I'm talking with Eric, that's the option. But there is kind of not doing actual architectural designs, or you want to talk about the other?
There's an option to not spend the full $65,000 and only go as far as what I would call like a schematic design level, which would give us some more baseline information.
Like the fire station? Is that very similar to what we got? Because I know we have to do full design, we're going into that, but we got schematics and then Concord price estimated it out.
Yep. It would be a scaled back version from doing the full design drawings.
But I mean, we're gonna have to do the full drawing at some
Right.
point.
Correct.
Can I request that? Let me have the board hear why. Like the fire station, it was a first step, it was cheaper, and we were able to say, are these the components we want for this cost, basic cost? It doesn't mean that there's finishes to the T. If you go to bidding documents, you might waste a lot of time and money to get to that level of detail if you really only want to spend $700,000 or whatever may be going through your head. And so I know that we're at a point of, I've heard from a few trustees that, including myself, but that we may want to spend less than $1 million. So saying that, I think it behooves us to spend less and get the schematics like we did with the fire station. And then once you've decided on the basic components for costing, then you move forward with that full design for bidding. So I would request that from our board. I don't know how other people feel about that. It sounds like it's an option. And the only other thing I had a question on was, there is a typical percentage for design services, for a rehab, for a new construction, and I've heard it over and over in over 20 years. So this seems high, $60,000, unless we were, I mean, it's 10% of a $600,000 garage, right? Like if the design. So I don't know what that standard is, I could find it out, but if you don't know it, could we just ask the architect what it typically is, the percentage of the construction budget that equate, because we're doing a fire station and it also has a garage, and there is still a standard of what that fee would be, whether it's 3%, 5%. Typical, it doesn't mean that's what, it's just a general guide,
Right.
and I don't know what that is.
I don't off the top of my head either,
Okay.
but I could certainly find out.
So I guess thank you very much. I'm just looking for some board input on the level of detail we want to get for this phase.
And you produced last October a fairly detailed list by system of building, what the cost. How, I mean, what more would you do from this level of detail?
I'll be completely honest, those numbers are based on some educated guesses of what we think it will take. So that's where I'm,
More
leaning towards getting more information on paper, because of it's an existing building, there's existing systems, there's existing walls, there's things that, you need to do some research on to get a better feel for. I would say those numbers are probably in the 10 to 15% range, plus or minus. That's the kind of window we're working in when we're just kind of budgeting these projects.
if we do that phase, is it more costly, or is that data needed for the next phase?
bid documents.
Or you do double, if you do this next step of the schematics and the more detail, would that be just a same phase you'd have to do anyhow to do the design, go to the full design?
It would close down, if we do the schematic option for the reduced fees, we would close the gap on that budget variance. But if you do the full design, we could almost bid it out right away and have that information.
I mean, I definitely think once we get schematic, that we want to look at, we need to come back to the board to look at some of those alternatives and what we, so I think there needs to be a stop in between the schematic step and the full drawings.
I mean, I think what we can do, I'm hearing is what we can do is we can come back with those numbers for the schematic drawings for your budget workshop on the 22nd, and we can have those for you,
Well,
There's no money,
or whatever date.
doesn't have any money.
so two things, I don't think we're gonna have enough time to have that discussion during wrap-up. It's gonna be a longer discussion than a budget wrap-up usually entails. So I don't know what the answer is, I just wanted to state that unless we wanna budget for more time on that meeting. My concern is, so when you say, so what we did for the fire station is we had Concord. So instead of going